Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And also keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we are after the closing bell on Tuesday, September 21st. We're going to take our daily look at SoFi. SoFi came roaring back today, as you see, securely wedging its candlestick from the day directly on the bottom bound and the upper bound of this wedge that we've been tracking now for several days or weeks, and have been looking for the price to compress within this wedge and eventually sort of pop itself out, hopefully in sort of a large dramatic move in one way or the other. Large move could get us up into still filling this gap, but as I mentioned in yesterday's video, I don't think so much that it'll be because there's a gap there, because it's been there for over a month now, and I feel like you have to time box these things in some way, shape, or form. Giving something forever to fill a gap just feels like a little bit of lazy TA to me, but so it goes. Anyway, stretched certainly up above this 1502 resistance zone that we had, and like we said, butting its head against that upper bound. So we'll continue to see what it does. If it's able to pop itself out of this wedge again, it'll be for the second time because we saw it do it there. Something that is sort of forming here, which I do kind of frequently as wedges kind of take different forms over different periods of time. There is, sort of a parallel wedge coming into play here that is probably worth at least keeping an eye on, with these two candlesticks here forming the top of that wedge, and this being a near miss off of it as well. So we'll see. If it does pop out, I would really be looking for it to blow through both of those upper bounds if it wants to make a nice swing to the upside. And on the MACD, kind of doing a bit of a head fake, which we've seen a couple of times now on this recent push, right? A head faked here and a head faked here. Now, what we could see setting up at this juncture would be the idea that there is just general bullish sentiment ready to sweep through SoFi, because we've seen this head fake a couple of times previously when I've seen this in stocks, especially as they're sitting below the baseline. It can signal that there's a large upturn coming because of the constant buying at key junctures in the supply and demand zones, I guess we'll call them. You see also some additional head fakes here that led to further pumps up, right? And even then, that was well above the baseline. I didn't go back to specifically see if this had occurred before in SoFi, but just as a general tenet, I do look for these head fakes on stocks that have a bullish crossover on the MACD that looked as though it was going to fail and then continued on. You see it in Palantir, actually. If you look at that chart recently, that has had several head fakes on the MACD that have allowed it to just continue this really, really nice push upward. So that's what I'm going to be looking for on the daily for the coming days. A resurgence of the MACD on the bullish side of things, and then see if the candlestick on the daily are able to push out of first this bound and then next this bound. And if so, maybe we get this gap into play. I'm still going to take this gap off of here. I don't know why it didn't save. I deleted it in yesterday's video, but I'm basically just looking for it at this point to establish over this 1502, which it has a really good opportunity to do tomorrow, and then make a run at 1629 and see if we have potentially exhausted some of the selling pressure that we saw with these wicks here when we made this push back the first and second week of September. And if so, then we might have a more clear-cut run to that true 1629 targets and see if it bounces off or it's able to push through on its first go and then retest, something like that. On the daily side of things, just to take a look on the 1 day here. So it did the nice thing that we've seen it do a couple of times in the midday, where it sort of chops up and down on the I keep thinking the MACD on the VWAP, and then essentially, it starts to move away, but then does a really nice, strong, swift movement to reclaim the VWAP. And then what's really important is the retest of the VWAP, right? So you saw if you were day trading it or looking to take a position intraday for any reason, you saw this push down from the VWAP. I still want to call it the MACD, my goodness. And then this pretty quick reclaim. Now, I wasn't making this trade, but this is a textbook kind of wait for it to reclaim the VWAP and then see if it's going to dip back below. A lot of times what's happening when it's chopping around like this is it's just kind of taking out a bunch of buy and sell orders that have been placed, like limit orders. And it's doing that around the VWAP. And then once it has a retest and rejects falling below or losing support on the VWAP a couple of times, as you see here, then it's kind of off to the races. So then it came up, struggled around that 1502 resistance zone that we had plotted, and then very quickly claimed that as support, retested that. So it was just sort of a day of patterns, to be honest. Lose it, retake it, test it twice. Lose it, retake it, test it twice, and then bump up to the next level. And it was able to hold there really strong into close. So I know it's down a couple of pennies, after close, but I thought that this was an incredibly strong day, not just because it's up over 4%, but just that pattern that I just showed of the ability to lose a key support structure like the VWAP or the 1502 supply and demand zone that we had charted, and then not only reclaim it, but do that double tap testing and have the buying pressure be there both times to push it up higher. That to me is a really good indication that this could be a sign for something that's gearing up to be a bit more long lasting. Now, I don't know if that'll really expose itself tomorrow necessarily or on Thursday, but I do think that these are, it's sort of like building a base here and not so dissimilar from it compressing in this confined zone. The bigger the base, the bigger the move is kind of the old trope. And so this to me is sort of bouncing around here, potentially building a pretty decent size base, especially as a potential reaction to this deep sell-off that we've had since the lockup and then since earnings came through. On the order flow side of things, interestingly enough, yesterday with the big sell-off, we didn't see any big large-scale orders come in. Now today with the recovery, we did see them coming in. So I don't know if that's sort of an indication of institutions maybe being less apt to buy particularly SoFi on a dip, and instead they're waiting to see if the recovery is there, and then we see them coming in a little bit today, or if just in a macro overall market sense, they weren't certain if yesterday's dip was a strong indication of something more dire in the market or more systemic in the market that was going to flow through and disrupt the market overall. And they were waiting for, in general, across the board, large-scale orders to unfold if a recovery sort of presented itself. So uncertain on that. I haven't looked at a bunch of other stocks to see where the outflow and inflow landed today on the large scale side of things, but just something to consider. It could just be that they're as uncertain as much of retail is, though we like to impart crystal balls on those institutions sometimes and think that they know everything that's happening. On the short data side of things, something to note, it obviously it had a nice boost today, and if we look at the 1 day, we don't see a bunch of undue selling pressure coming in after pumps. So where exactly these shorts came in, I'm not sure, but unless it was here with this very quick downturn, which that doesn't really appear to me to be the likely scenario. I don't know if they piled in here closer to close, but anyway, Ortex estimating a change in short interest today of over 100%, and that brings us up over 5%, which isn't alarming in and of itself, but the closer it inches toward 10, that's when I start to raise some alarm bells. So this is a pretty strong movement. It would have been in the 2s yesterday, and so now it's up over 5. So something to keep an eye on. If it did the same thing again tomorrow, which that would be kind of a crazy back-to-back move, but it could happen. that's when I would look and I'd say, okay, now we're up over 10, and now we've had 2 days of really, really strong short interest change coming in to short the stock. We should be aware of that just for the sake of undue selling pressure or distortion in the price action, and to sort of see how that takes shape. We saw them get up into double digits a few weeks ago and then pull back and scale out quite dramatically. So we'll see what they do in the coming days, but something worth keeping an eye on, in my opinion. All right, well, that will do it for this one. I certainly hope that you had a nice trading day today. I hope that it felt a lot better than yesterday. And oh, one random thing. I have briefly been skimming comments lately. I've just been very pressed for time, so I know that I haven't jotted down many tickers that folks have requested that I've covered. I'm going to try and go back, but again, if I haven't replied to your request, just drop that as a fresh comment in whatever video. That'll put it back to the top of the queue on my side and will help me see it. Otherwise, I could just miss it when I go through these days and days span where I don't look at the comments too methodically. But I did notice a few that were talking, sort of saying something about that I sounded very down, or, basically that don't worry about the red day, it's going to turn around, like, don't sweat it. But I couldn't tell if they were just saying that in general, or if they felt as though I was sounding very bearish in the video. I don't know. But this is just to say, like, don't worry about that stuff. I feel like folks comment on that a lot. I don't get too emotionally tied into these stocks. I can get excited sometimes, and I can get sort of intrigued by the position that a stock is in, not price position, but more sort of like the predicament that it's in. Talked about that before with IPOE, and since it changed to SoFi, the predicament that the stock has been in. Those things interest me. But I don't get really down. Like, even if I'm down in a position, I'm pretty numb to those things. I think, for a good thing. So if I sound that way, honestly, it's probably just that I'm tired. I have 2 young children. They are very energy expendent, and you just have to keep up with them. And I'm not the springiest chicken. I'm not the youngest dad that you will have met for sure. So, and I have a very sort of taxing job as well. So taxing job, trying to keep up with these videos, trying to keep up with the family and the kids. It just makes for very, very long days. And so when I'm making these videos always after market close, you could just be getting a pretty worn out version of Dan at that point. And that may make me sound very subdued or very down or what have you. But just a note on that, if anyone was commenting on it in any way that they thought that, I was exceedingly down on something or whatever, just a note for those folks. But otherwise, it's fine. All right, so what was I saying? I hope you had a good trading day and that you are headed into hump day tomorrow already in a strong, vibrant mentality. And I appreciate you watching. I will see you in the next video.